to another edition of the Souls of Black Folk broadcast. I am student minister Rodney Muhammad here of the city of Philadelphia in the Delaware Valley, and the co-host, student minister Michael Muhammad from Atlantic City. And so we're happy to bring another edition of our programming to you. And tonight we're going to do a post-election analysis, if you will. And we've asked, and he promised to come back, Brother Omar Sabir, who has won for election commissioner there in the city of Philadelphia. And of course, they have been playing a significant role getting national attention at the presidential election there in 2020. And so he has been a very busy fellow coming around. And so we have been blessed to get him to come back. And we're hoping to have an interesting discussion on analyzing what actually happened in this midterm election. We understand from some news reports that it's probably the most highest level of participation in the history of midterms in the United States of America. So some 42 million people voted ahead of time. And of course, because of Republican-ran state assemblies, the laws say that these votes can't be counted until election day. And so for some of these elections, we've had to wait several days after election day. So it's a lot of interesting discussion. They're talking about it all over the country. We got to talk about the anticipated red wave that never took place. It went down to a little ripple. And what happened to the Donald Trump appointees that were very gallant and valiant, politically speaking, in their primaries. But when it came time for the general election, they began to peter out. And it looks like hardly any of the Donald Trump endorsed people won their elections. So we're gonna talk about that with Omar Sabir, and hopefully you'll enjoy this programming. And I don't know if you voted or not. It's okay. We don't necessarily promote what party you should vote for in that. Personally, I've always voted, though I'm still a member of the Nation of Islam. We've never been instructed not to vote. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has voted on a couple of occasions, and our own, the mother of our nation, Mother Khadija, has certainly voted when it came to Barack Obama. I took a personal account of two things that have happened to us in this country. Certainly, the science of evil has manipulated us in many, many ways. Too often our own foot is in our own way when it comes to progress, but there are two things that they actively forbid us to do. One was to know how to read and write, and two was to vote. And so since they tried to take those two things from us, I participate in those two things. I sort of enforce it in my household on my sons. You're going to know how to read. And then if you choose to, I want to teach you how to vote. So we have been participating in that. And so we ask you to brace yourselves, notepads out. Let's look at what the political map looks like, what government is shaping up to be in this time. And I think our guest is trying to come on with us. And so we're very happy to have Brother Omar Sabir, who has been a very busy elections commissioner working there. And so good evening, Omar.
Morning, brother.
Oh, all right, all right. It's good to see you again,
evening, brother. We got the morning, brother. We got to get
look,
the sunrise and we get to the sunset, brother.
We're trying to figure out what happened here. But you know, the first thing I want to say to you, and I certainly thank you for coming back for part two, is congratulations. You all, the mail-in ballots, the way they were secured and that we didn't seem to have a lot of hiccups, politically speaking. It seemed to be a smooth operation. And so congratulations to you all. You all have 3 election commissioners that, I'll fight any day against the committee of 70 talking about getting rid of the row offices, thinking that we don't need them.
Well, committee of 70. But hold on, in fairness now, committee of 70.
Who is that?
Committee of 70 changed their position, so.
Oh, they did change their position?
At least about the commissioner's office. I don't know about everything else, but I know
about the commissioner. Well, they
right.
should. They should.
Right, but the CEO is former Commissioner Al Smith now, so this is different.
Oh, Al Smith was?
No, Al Smith is the CEO of Committee of 70 now.
Okay.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Well, it makes sense that it changed then.
He changed their position.
Yeah, because he was an election commissioner and he knows the kind of work you guys put in, and trying to keep people, society as a whole, at a level of enthusiasm about a constitutional right that we have. But people have grown so discouraged over the decades, politically speaking, that it's a monumental effort just to get people to have some measurable turnout. So I really thank you guys for the work that you put in. Are all the mail-in ballots counted?
Most of them. I mean, we still have to do the provisional ballots, and we're still waiting for some of the overseas ballots to come back into the military ballots. But for the most part, I mean, yeah, for the most part, it's pretty much over. Most of it, yes, very significant amount.
So it looks to me like, and maybe you can share some insight on this. It looks to me like for Pennsylvania, it's like mission accomplished. They took a seat that was normally held by Republicans at the Senate level. Josh Shapiro's win for governor, and then we have our own lieutenant governor, and we picked up another seat in Congress with I'm trying to think of her name now, Summer Lee. So she's the first Black woman to go to Congress, actually from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And there was a lot of AIPAC and others were trying to keep her from getting in. She likely will become a member of the squad when she gets there to Washington. And so it looks like Pennsylvania really showed up and showed out for the national map and played a big role in stopping the anticipated red wave.
So it's another thing that was added too, was that Democrats are going to probably take control of the Pennsylvania State House as well. So Rep. Leader McClinton, she will be, instead of being the minority leader, she'll actually be the Speaker of the House. So she'll be the first African-American woman to be the Speaker of the House. And she would be the second African-American since Leroy Irvis was African-American Speaker of the House. So, I mean,
that's a big thing. Wow. So how did that happen? Were we looking at the map? Because I know they worked on gerrymandering here so that they could try to hold most of the assembly seats.
So Joanna McClinton was working on it. I mean, when she was in leadership, Jordan Harris in leadership, you got a lot of young African-American leadership in the state house. Mm-hmm. They worked out the maps. I mean, but then you had population shifts. So you had a lot of people that was coming in from New York now that's living up in Allentown, places that were traditionally, people that probably didn't look like you and I, but you got people coming in from all over the state. So just as many people's coming to Philly from New York, the Poconos is maybe about the same distance as this from New York. So they're living over there, lower cost of living, the same exact reasons why they moved to Philadelphia. So you're starting to see upticks in different places. You're seeing an increase in Latino population. I mean, you're seeing, we saw the first elected Dominican American ever elected across our state. So we're seeing a lot of diversity all across the world. And we're seeing that a lot of these younger people, they're not bending to like traditional, so that's the way how it's supposed to go. They're out there, they're working. We also have an African American caucus whose chair is Lisa Rhodes with state committee. And then you saw the first African American ever elected to state Democratic Party, which is Senator Steve Street. So, you see all these little underlining things, that they're working hard, tirelessly all
Mhm.
across our state, working on going to certain counties that I'd be like, man, y'all going all the way up there? I mean, they up there, man. And I'm
They're
like,
up there.
wow.
Well, I admit, I was able to open a new mosque up in the Lehigh Valley area.
Yeah.
And I was surprised how many people had moved from New York and New Jersey that all live up there. So, well, that's a good thing to hear. And so that puts us, because part of this red wave, the anticipated red wave that was supposed to happen, it was supposed to even translate into some general assemblies kind of getting away from elected election commissioners and having the General Assembly choose their own electors.
Sure.
And I
Yeah,
got to, yeah.
sure. I mean, this is some things that they've been working on for years. This isn't really something really new. I mean, President Barack Obama was elected. We saw significant investments in state houses, school boards, county commissioners all across our country, where they kind of conceded to the presidency, but they were spending big bucks in a lot of those smaller races across the country because they knew that they would end up being Congress. They would be drawing up the maps. So whereas though you may have a Democratic or so governor, but you would still have a Republican sort of legislator. And then if you lucked up and got a Republican governor, you could push whatever policies that you wanted to go through. So, well, it's good to see it on a local level because politics are local. And this upcoming election is going to, every 6 months, we always say, this is the most important election that we ever had, but it's
Every time.
But it's still, crucial because, in addition to city council, the row offices, commissioner, sheriff, register of wills. You have the judges. We may have an unprecedented number of judges that's going to be running. So you're talking about maybe it could be upwards of 15 to 16 judges running, and judges affect your life. There's a vacancy on the Supreme Court. I think it's an opening on Commonwealth Court, Superior Court, and then all our local judges. So,
yeah.
And that's something that, we want to take a look at because judges affect our life, every possible way. And these are the elections that people typically take off and say, you know what, I did my job. The midterm, I'll see y'all in 2024, but no, every 6 months, you have to come out and you have to vote. Actually, the controller is going to be on there too because she resigned as well. So the stakes are just getting higher and higher. And as you know, the controller is basically, the city watchdog for finances. So when we're trying to really discuss things about our budget and things of this nature, so everybody's going to say they don't have the money, but the controller office can give you reports on all of the money. They could talk about the contract and they could talk about procurement. It's processes that we need to look at. So again, it's all important to me. But again, people will.
Well, now we would, yeah, and I agree with you. I think one of the things I noticed when Donald Trump was in office was too often the media had people concentrating on his tweets. But all the while, Mitch McConnell was working to get federal judge appointments. And this was taking place. And these are lifelong appointments. These people don't have to run for office again, that McConnell was doing, notwithstanding that Supreme Revenge on Frontline shows that Mitch McConnell was a young senator when Ronald Reagan nominated Bork for the Supreme Court, and Bork was rejected. And McConnell promised then that they were going to dominate that Supreme Court. So he's been, while we've been playing sort of a political short game of checkers, he's been playing the long game of chess. And he finally got what he wanted. So he's done his damage for his political career by setting the Supreme Court up the way that they have it. But
right, I mean, so what's interesting how crucial that is. We saw a federal judge in Texas block the student loan student forgiveness, and that was
Yeah.
a judge that they appointed. So I mean, it's these sort of these decisions affect us in
Mhm.
more ways than others. So we just want to pay attention, and then also we want to pay attention to also, uh, for the governor's race, lieutenant governor in particular. Josh Shapiro is still the attorney general, so that means he has a few months left in his term. So typically, when
Mm.
someone is leaving their office and they're like a lame duck, there's
Mhm.
certain powers and things they can do that they probably wouldn't have done when they were just coming into office. It could be some extra funding laying around. It could be an investigation that you might want them to do, or it could be something that you want the attorney general's office to do. I think you can explore that. It may be a few jobs still available where you might have someone that may want some experience on their resume. You might say, hey, why don't you hire somebody for a couple of months, so they can have that on their resume. I mean, there's different things that happens on that budget, as well as the lieutenant governor.
Mhm.
Fetherman's going to be the senator. So he's still the lieutenant governor. Governor Wolf is still the governor, so he can actually do pardons, before he leaves office. So there's
Mm.
still things that they can do before they leave. There's certain appointments that they can make.
And that's between now and January, right?
Between now and January, you got some time. I mean, actually, till December 31st.
31st.
Right. So that's when their term actually is up. So you
So
still
I
got
guess,
time.
yeah, a lot of the major network media people are saying now they're anticipating Donald Trump announcing another run in 2024. Does he stand a chance?
Hey, anybody that want to run can stand a chance, man. It's that's the one thing I learned about politics. You can never count anybody out.
Mhm.
And elections in general are just typically just closer. You really don't see too many landslides as much as you used to see. And now elections are closer. And so anyone has an opportunity to win once you get on to be, a candidate.
So okay, but now he obviously he anointed certain people to run. They seem to do well. I'm talking about Donald Trump now. They seem to do well in the primary, but when it came to this general election, I don't know of anyone that he's backed personally that won. And it looks like it might be some infighting inside the tent of the Republicans about whether or not Donald Trump is a value component for them moving forward as a party.
Yeah, well, that's something they're gonna have to work out. You know, and inside they rumbling. And then I guess when it comes to those general elections, it's about relationships. I mean, that's definitely something they have to work on. There's definitely polarizing positions in the
Mm-hmm.
Republican Party and inside the Democratic Party, where you're seeing this ultra polarized far left versus kind of like the conservative Democratic beliefs. So
Mm-hmm.
it's far right, and then it's kind of like conservative sort of Republicans. So I guess whoever sort of plays kind of like that moderate in the middle can pretty much capture votes from both sides, and then that's how you end up being successful. But I think African Americans need to understand that throughout everything, African Americans are the swing vote. Whatever which way
Mm-hmm.
the African Americans sort of decide which way they want to vote, that's typically the winner. So what they can gauge who's going to win the presidency based off of turnout from the African American community. And it's sort of always been like that, but they don't necessarily really spill that secrecy sauce with you, because it's kind of like we don't want to make it seem like the African Americans are actually deciding the president. But there's a certain voter turnout number that they know if African Americans get past this vote, then such and such will be president. If they doesn't get to this number, then people are not. That's why it's a lot of messaging really to get you not to vote or think that you're not important or that you're insignificant, and you feel to say, you know what, I'm just going to leave politics alone. And then there is like a surplus, a lot of negative ads
Mm-hmm.
on both sides to make it so dirty. Whereas, you know what, I think both candidates are nasty. I'm not going to vote for anybody, right? But they fail to educate you about the ballot questions, because ballot questions, you don't have to vote for a candidate. They just don't want you to vote at all. They don't want you to come out. That's why the returning citizens population, millions of them don't even know that they can vote. and that's by design. They've been targets of disinformation for decades. Just in Philadelphia alone, you have anywhere upwards of 300 to 400,000 returning citizens, and a significant number of those returning citizens don't even believe that they can vote. I mean, if you poll them, they'll say, "Can you vote?" And they're eligible to vote. They're going to tell you, "No, I can't." So there's a lot of work that needs to be
Mhm.
done.
There's
That keeps
usually
turning out.
there's usually at least 1 million plus eligible voters in Philadelphia. What was our turnout for
So
this midterm?
you had about half of Philadelphia came out.
About half of
500,000, yeah.
uh-huh. Wow, that's sizable for a midterm, because usually we just have a depressing number.
Yeah. So right. So it pretty much varies. In the last open gubernatorial race, we had 379,000 people that came out. So the last time it was like an open sort of open seat for governor, that last midterm was 379,000 people that came out.
Mhm.
This is the first time since 1966 that you had the same party taking over the governorship again. Meaning you had 4 years of one party, and now you have another
Mhm.
elected official that represents that same party.
Same party.
Right. So that the last time that happened is 1966.
So
Normally it
yeah,
goes from
wait,
normally it switch parties.
yeah. Now, some of the analysts looking at the national map, they felt that in Pennsylvania, what drove voters more was the right to choose, where they thought, that the Republicans thought people would vote their pocketbook, like the cost of gas and inflation
Uh,
at the grocery store, and that, which I know are still concerns of voters, but they felt that I guess the polls showed that the right to choose played a big role. In,
so here's the thing about the polls, right? There's
Mhm.
certain people that they ask for those polls. They don't ask everybody.
Mhm.
A lot of those exit polls, they don't do it probably in areas where people look like you and I. So
Mhm.
yeah, okay, there were issues probably where they asked, but we don't know whether or not that was an accurate sort of number. I mean, I think it's something we might can ask our family and friends, why
Mhm.
was it that you voted? And then you can come back with your data. So I'm not going to say that that's the number one reason. I mean, I know that's what
Mhm.
they say, and that's fine. But from what I've been hearing from just constituents who I've been reaching with is they were concerned about voting rights and they were concerned about crime and the gun violence. Those are the
Mhm.
reasons why that they felt out that they wanted to come out.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we had some city council races. They were special elections. They just went smooth. The people who ran for council at large, and I think it was the ninth uh, district, which is my own councilman district, with Sherelle Parker resigning
Right.
to run for mayor. Um, all of those people are in. I think Anthony Phillips ran for the ninth. So we'll be getting some figures out. I've been asked to run for ward committeeman in my area. I'm
What
usually
ward you
always
in, man?
helping anyway, so I
What ward
probably
you in?
will help in the 61st ward
Okay.
with Pete.
Big
Pete
Pete. Yeah,
Glide is
yeah,
my
yeah. Yeah.
my ward leader,
Right.
and we're right around the corner from each other. So
Yeah.
we tend to, I usually always help him anyway with the meetings that go on. But I guess we're bracing now for, I I would say probably it's even started now that the midterms are over. Some very aggressive races within the city for the primary coming up in May of 2023.
This primary is going to really, it could either tear our city apart or it's going to build our city together. Because a lot of these elections, man, it'll be a lot of hurt feelings going into
Mhm.
these races when they win or lose. And these sort of feelings, they last for decades, man. They last for decades. So
Yeah.
hopefully, it'll go well. But there's a lot of people that's running for mayor. It's a lot of them. You may have about 50 candidates running for city council. I mean, it's
At
just
large, huh? Or for the
at
district.
large. What's the total? Yeah, it could be. I mean, you could see open, like I say, you basically got open seat over Sherrod Parker. You got open seat over with Maria Keona Sanchez. I mean, those candidates that they kind of endorsed one special election, but they got to run again. So I mean,
Mhm.
we'll see. I mean,
Well,
you
I think
got Jimmy Harrison.
Alan Dom
Yeah,
resigned, but I don't think he's actually made any public announcement that he's running for mayor.
he going for mayor.
And I think
He running for mayor. He gonna run for mayor. Jeff Brown announcing this week.
Jeff Brown's announcing this
Rebecca
week.
Reinhardt, she resigned.
Yeah, she threw her hat in the ring. I saw that.
Yes, I mean it's Helen Gem might run for it. I mean, so again, all these numbers, all these people, again, like I said, it could get very, confrontational. It could be, and then all row offices are up. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting election. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting time.
Yeah, so that's pretty. And of course, as an election commissioner, you're not, I mean, technically, you're not one way or the other. You're just trying to be sure that there's a clear pathway for people to have access to vote.
As always, as always.
Uh-huh.
I
And
mean, you're just making it easier for the citizens of Philadelphia to cast their vote. And again, from my perspective, when we look at the number and we see 500,000 Philadelphians that came out and voted, that gives you leverage when you're negotiating on behalf of Philadelphia. So any policymaker, Democrat, Republican, whenever they, applying for resources for Philadelphia, the voters vote. That gives us resource and accountability. It's just what it is, no matter who you vote for. It's that sort of thing that when you're voting, you're helping your community, and when you're not voting, you're hurting community. And a lot of people don't understand that sort of concept. That when you press that button, you're saying that we care about our community. You're saying that we need help for our community. You're saying that we need accountability all across the board, when someone advocates on our behalf. And so as that duty as a Philadelphian, when it increases our voter turnout, magical things will happen to Philadelphia just because you voted. Magical things will happen to your zip code just because you vote. Magical things will happen when you're blocked just because you're blocked. And they even break it down into blocks. It's like, yeah, okay, from the way how, when they decide snow removal, to which potholes get fixed, to, whatever kind of way that the trash men decide to leave your trash, right? I mean, it works from that sort of lower level all the way up to what nonprofits get funding for that area. What kind of businesses are we going to open up in that area? What type of planning are we going to do in that area? The vote, when you vote, it matters. And so that tells like policymakers how to sort of, deal with that community. And they deal with communities different that don't vote. They do certain things inside areas with people that don't vote. I mean, it's obvious. You could just really just look at the numbers, look at the data to the high turnout sort of areas. You can even break it down block by block. Like, okay, this block got a significant vote turnout. And you could just look at the condition of the block, of the neighborhood, of areas that don't vote versus areas that do vote.
So, yeah, well, in terms of 2024, and the way Congress is looking, it looks to me like the House of Representatives can either learn how to work together, or we're just going to have like a stalemate in government. The way the chessboard looks right now, if Democrats control the Senate, Republicans pretty much control the House. It's a razor thin margin that they'll be controlling it. But if they have to adhere to an extreme group in there, McCarthy can't really manage this team of wild horses, as they say, then things just, to me, get held up in government at the federal level. And, I don't think it bodes well, for the country. Everybody drawing their line in the sand.
Well, so I think what's missing is, and another thing with these sort of dismal turnouts, right? You don't necessarily really understand like what the American people is talking about, and what the American people truly want. And I say that basically reflecting back to 1957,
Mm-hmm.
where you had Bloody Sunday that happened in March. And by April, Lyndon B. Johnson was
Yes,
actually signing the legislation for the Voting Rights Act. And you only had 6 African-American members of Congress then, right?
that's right.
And it got done. And we see now how you have, I think it's 57, 58 members, and you can't get the Voting Rights, John Lewis Voting Rights Act signed. And I think it just comes from whatever the American people want, right? I think it's larger than just allowing Democrats or Republicans or independents or anybody sort of dictate to you what you want for your country. You're not seeing the sort of mass protesting. You don't see sort of the demand from the American people wanting whatever it wants. I mean, gas is still increasing, right? Gas is like almost $4 in the wintertime. You know, it's expensive. And we just came out of the pandemic and the price of everything is going up. But we still don't see that sort of protest from the American people saying, hey, we want help. And until the American people step up, because a lot of it's corporate greed. A lot of these prices that are increasing at our supermarkets, it's just from corporate greed.
Price
It doesn't have
gouging.
anything to do with it. This is price gouging. And, you know, like you're starting to see sometimes even up the bag of chips now. It's like it's all air and it's like 2 or 3 chips. You open up the cereal. It's a big box, but it's like, and it's like, yo, wait a minute. Then it's like even, you start to taste like even like with the food, it's like the ingredients don't even taste like the same anymore. And I was just telling my wife about this, like, yo, you know, we go out to eat. It's like, you know, it seems like they're missing something, like they're cutting corners. And so everybody keeps saying the pandemic, this automation, where you walk into supermarkets now, where you got all of these self-service sort of things, and you don't have people getting these jobs, and you don't have people ringing your stuff out no more. And again, that's corporate greed. I mean, you can hire people to open up to be tellers, and you could do self-service. But again, it's like this corporate greed of capitalism is affecting our country. And I think we can, as the American people, sort of say what we want. We don't have to sit back and say, okay, it's gridlock. It's y'all have to get this done on the behalf of the American people. And
well, the New York
that's sort of
Post,
what's missing.
yeah. Well, I was going to say the New York Post, I think yesterday had an article about a big billionaire donor for Joe Biden, who was said to had bankrupted the cryptocurrency chain. And I think the head of the Democratic campaign committee in New York, he was a congressman. He lost his own district, but he was saying out of 7 people giving to the Republican National Committee, it was over $70 to $75 million. So it seems like special interest groups are still holding a high place with these political parties, and it sort of hijacks any real concern with the American people as a whole when you're satisfying these special interest groups at both levels. You know, they lobby, they're able to put in big dollars. They're strategic investments, I call them, as opposed to wide range $25 investments from a mass of people.
Yeah, but if you look at like, you know, so the thing is really, it's like big money going to be involved in anything, right? So it all matters what the American people like want. Like if the American people came out and said, hey, we got to put a stop to Jeff Bezos and we're going to protest, you know, we're going to boycott you. You know, when they lose 1% of a percent and then it's not showing growth, that opens up the door for somebody else. That's how capitalist society really sort of operate. And when American people feel as though that they're powerless, they can't compete, that's the whole game. I can't do anything. I just got to go along with it. And we really have to really be concerned about the amount of money that we're spending on certain things. And then you can finance, you know, your own sort of campaigns, right? You can finance those. You might say, okay, the $25 donations, but you know, if you do like a sort of digital sort of campaign, why they do it now, you can get millions and millions of dollars. You know, so again, if the American people feel that they're powerless, then you're going to start seeing more and more and more corporate greed. And I think it's beyond Democrat, it's beyond Republican, right? And it's even starting to really become beyond African American and white. I think it's really starting to be that sort of rich, sort of poor, and the middle class is being destroyed. And you're really starting to see these sort of classes where you're really rich or you just poor, and not necessarily poor in the sense like you want food stamps, just poor. You're making six figures, but you still got to work every single day, and you can't take a day off.
Yeah.
You don't got no savings. You're just getting by, right? You
Right.
straddled with student loan debt. These are things that are affecting us, every single day where you just really can't, advance. And it has to be some sort of break somewhere. And I think we have to identify these sort of things, what they are. And I think it's growth, and I think it's opportunity for us to do make necessary changes. But a lot of the younger generation has to truly understand where their power is, and the power has always, led with the people. Because no matter how many rich people you got, it's only a small, maybe like 1/10 or 1% of these people that exists, and it's still a democracy. And so when you're still fighting, the good fight, we can't ever stop, because the next generation, they kind of, it's just all right, it's just the way how things are. It's like, no, wait a minute. There was a point in time we didn't have a weekend, man. Like, people used to actually work. And so as you're starting to see now, people saying things like they don't want to teach critical race here, or they don't want to teach accurate American history, that's sort of like a problem, because you don't want to wake up the previous generation. And a lot of them don't understand what the struggle and things are, because they're not. So that's when it comes upon us to really teach that sort of history that they're trying to close up. And now, even with some of the digital history now, where they're changing the books. And so it's like when I was younger, my dad used to have these old brown encyclopedias. I used to hate them. They would clog up in our basement, but you couldn't change that information.
Right.
And you can change books now. So you might be reading a digital book, but they're changing the information up. You know what I mean? You need that accurate information. You need them hard copies, man. Hey, man, that's what it was. This what it is. And even if you look at a lot of the programming that we see on our television now, right? It's like reality shows. I mean, it's things that's designed to make you dumber, and it's really targeted a lot of African American and Latinos, to make you just confused, not know nothing about nothing. Because when I was reflecting back and I'm talking, so look, man, we used to watch shows like G.I. Joe. I mean, it was Transformers. But in every show, they would give you like the last 5 minutes with different stuff. Like, okay, if you're hiking, here's what you do. Here's how you tread water. There was so much different jewels that they were giving you, just even on the cartoons. And then my generation, we had Different World. We had the Cosby Show. We had Living Single. We had this wave of like positive programming. This generation don't have none of that now. Because I sat down with my kids, I'm like, what stuff y'all watching? It's like, come on, man. And it's like, even the commercials are just off the hook now. Where it's like, okay, before you said, okay, we want to watch regular TV. But even now, you got to fast forward the commercials, because a lot of the commercials are over sexualized. I mean, it's crazy. And so all of that stuff being interpreted, that's when we got to reflect back on energizing the American people to get out and speak whatever is what the American people want or believe they deserve. But you can't allow those corporate interests to decide everything. And it's like, it has to be some sort of time to really say, hold on.
But it seems though, when we step out of our house, by the time we reach in our pocket to spend the first dollar, we're entertaining the corporate community.
Yeah.
It's hard, you can't buy chewing gum, breath mints, toothpaste. I mean, you name it. To me, you're supporting the corporate community. And it's very hard to get a mass of people to really shut down and say, well, we're not going to support the corporate community, because everywhere you turn, every need you have, I mean, they have product lines out here that meet some of the immediate real needs of the people. They're not luxury items that you could go without for a lot of people. So we really have to be strategic now, because the days of Leon Sullivan, you can really protest a certain corporation product line, but by the time we protest on one side of the street, when the protest is over, by the time we go over to get a soda pop or a sandwich, you're still supporting the people you were just protesting because of mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of things. So seems to me there needs to be a real review of how this thing is hardwired.
Well, again, so in that, right, you gotta think about it. Like it's really opportunity now, right? So a lot of people don't come out and protest no more, right?
That's
You don't
right.
have to get 50 or 100 people to shut down a council person's office, man. You can get 5 to 10 people walking in with signs on and t-shirts on, and that'll make effect. You get 5 to 10 people with some noisemakers to go down to city council, right? Because now with social media and everything like that, it could be, oh man, these people was down here at city council causing hell, and because I reflect back when I saw Reverend Sharpton's movie Loudmouth, just the stuff that they was doing, shutting down the subways, doing all that kind of stuff, right? And so when I used to hear people on WRD talk about that kind of stuff, I used to be like, man, these people is crazy. Ain't nobody shutting down the expressway. But it's stuff that y'all were doing, like, whoa, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but again, like I say, but this newer generation, I think like if you get, like I say, 10, 15 people with signs on, t-shirts on, yelling, making noise, that can still kind of add, to that sort of thing where you still kind of got that movement. And, I think taking advantage of turning the clock back, actually meeting up with people, because people are outside. These younger people, they walking downtown at nighttime, they're out here, right? And so we just got to figure out how can we sort of galvanize that sort of interest to get whatever it is, what we want. It has to be more organizations, right? It has to be more marches, not less, right? We did the Million Man March. I think it's time for another one, right? It's another movement. It's certain things, and maybe we might reimagine how we want to look at that, what it would look like for 2024, 2025. Is it the same thing? Is it all it's going to DC? Or is it us taking 1 million people to different cities and then spending, resources, building up economies? Who knows what that looked like? But I think it has to be the right stakeholders at the table sort of explaining whatever policies that people really want that's beneficial to them. And it has to be an on the ground, in your face sort of campaign. It has to be intergenerational, right? We have to employ the strategies that we used back in the 60s and 70s and infuse it with now. Because a lot of times, a lot of these people, they don't know too much about nothing, right? Because my sons, they go to mathematics, civic science, with Veronica Joyner. So they know about stuff.
Mine were there.
Yeah, right. So sort of like stringent like education that they give you there. But most schools don't get that, right? And so that's what we're dealing with. And so we have to sort of change that sort of dynamic, right? Which way we want to do it. And it's the way how we look at it. Like, so we want to take over our schools, that's fine. But I think we need to look at, okay, can we do security in our schools?
I think it's a worthy pursuit to do something about taking over or having a stronger voice in the education of our children. I've literally sat with Dr. Haidt before him going, talking to him about the model of mathematics, civics and science school. He just absolutely didn't want to do it. So I'm saying, so to me, like
he can't do it though. But now, so I'm saying, in fairness though, he can't do it. The board is going to push him around. You know what I mean? And like, or whatever superintendent, right? Those are your typical superintendent. They're not from the city. They from somewhere else. They're basically going to be a figurehead, like a CEO, and that's fine. It has to start from the bottom up. We have to get stakeholders involved. You got to have the parents involved. You got to have the students involved, and you got to have the teachers at the teachers union at the table to really sit down. Okay, see, what does this really sort of look like? And then we can make a sort of assessment at, okay, let's make a cost risk assessment. Like, okay, if Masterman, if Central, if all of these schools are being performing a certain way, what are they doing there that they're not doing in the Overbrooks and the Bartrams and neighborhood school.
But that
What's the
was
difference?
part of what gave birth to the charter school.
Right.
To experiment and to find out some best practices that could be bled back into the public school institutional dynamic. That's not taking place. There just seems to be a chasm between a well-run charter school, because all of them aren't. But you know, so you get this argument about school choice and public schools, but in school choice, if somebody doesn't meet the standards of the choice, when that child is let go, they just fall through the cracks. There's nowhere for them to go. And if you leave the public school in ruins, you know,
That's one
we
of,
just have a lot of children with no hope now.
Yeah, but see, like I said, once you start getting up in the weeds, that sort of conversation, that puts the children as the last priority. And I think just the litmus test got to be, okay, would you send your children to the schools, right? And if you wouldn't send your children to the schools, right, then let's fix them, right? And again, it could be all different ways how we can do it. But I think ultimately, you got to involve, like I said, the parents. Because at the end of the day, the parents are the ones
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like the parents are the ones that are actually signing really the checks, because at any point in time, if the parents ever raise up and say, you know what, I'm not going to send my children to the school because it's not adequately providing appropriate education for my child, that cuts off the spigot, because now nobody can make money off your child. And then you that's how you kind of force that change. I know people say things like, well, we're going to do about daycare. We'll figure all that out. But at the end of the day, we got to have some sort of buy-in from the parents. You got to have a sort of buy-in from the teachers union, because you got to really have the conversation with the teachers. And like I said, some of them may even need to understand history back to how it was when I was going to school. So you example, you know, man, my teacher used to live right down the street from me, Miss Harris. I'll never forget her. I was about 12 years old. And I wasn't necessarily a great student, right? I wasn't a bad student where they would send me like the Boom or like the Cato or something like that.
Right.
But I wasn't like a great student, but you know, they still kind of liked me. I remember one time she told me, I was chewing gum, and she told me, don't spit that gum in the trash can. I was like, what? Boom. Boy, she gave me a 2-piece. Boom, boom. This little short woman, man, she boom, boom. I said, oh. And she felt bad about it. And she told my parents. My parents was like, good. He deserved it. You know? So, I mean, you know, so I don't know, even know if these teachers now are even talking with older teachers. I'm not advocating, you know, that sort of hitting on children, but I'm still saying, like, I think even the experience on how to deal with Black children, you know, primarily, you know, what are some of the best practices that we can do for raising the African-American children? Because you basically raise them. Because if you got them from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you got them there longer with the parents.
Well, that's Veronica Joyner's concept, but I kind of agree with that, because when I was leaving 7th grade, going to 8th grade, I left an all-Black public school south side of Chicago, and I ended up in a white, actually Jewish community and that. But when I went my first day in a public school there, it was almost like I had gone to a college campus. The demands that were made on me in my last year of public school at the primary school level was incredible. And I had to rise my game up to the occasion. But it's still a public school, but it was not the same from one neighborhood to the next, one zip code to the next. And I just think that you're not going to get a big argument about public schools from other communities, because those schools were meeting all the marks. It seems to be in our community. I've even gotten to the point where people tell me, well, the system's broken. I said, no, I think they perfected it. We're the ones that are broken in this system. And it's not that we have to fix it, we have to change it to make that thing work for us so that our children are able to compete. But I mean, it's another argument, but sometimes it plays into elections and what someone wants to do.
Sure.
I was against elected school boards, but I've kind of changed over the years because I felt we would politicize it too much from the community level and might not be as an effective board. But I think if public schools fail in our city, and most of it is African-American children or Black and brown children, then the onus needs to be on us, but it can't be on us if we're not an elected board. If someone else,
right, but I
appointed
mean,
people.
yeah, I mean, but again, it's like, so this again, Dr. King spoke about, think about the freedoms that you have right now. So, okay, yes, if the mayor is
Mhm.
going to appoint these positions, which is fine, right? Okay, well, here's the people that we want. You know, if you don't do this, then we're not going to support you. Or we're going to make your life hell trying to be a mayor if you're not putting these people in. And I think,
Mhm.
you know, we don't necessarily know what the power of a mayor is. Like, you don't, like, a lot of people don't know what all the boards and appointments that they do have, right? That's why I was spoken earlier about some of these lamed up positions right now. Like Governor Wolf, he has veto. Number one, he has pardon powers. In addition, he has appointments to boards and positions that he can appoint to people, and they could be there for years even after he's gone. So we need to look at and examine that, but we don't really truly understand what the power of each position that everyone holds. We don't know what the power of the register of wills is and what power a sheriff has and what power a commissioner has. You know, we really need to first, sort of like I say, sort of look at, okay, this person can do this. You can do this with a stroke of the pen. And I think even some of the people that are elected to these positions don't even know the power that they have. There's somebody calling them up saying, hey man, you got this sort of power, I want you to do this. A lot of times that person might say, okay, cool, yeah, I do it, you know, fine. You know, ain't nobody else asked about it, complaining about it. So you got to really sit down and just really just study what exactly is government. What
So
exactly is
we're
this
about
5 billion?
so we're about 6 months away from a major primary in the city of Philadelphia, and just starting.
Oh, wait a minute. No. I mean, that's the wrong way of looking at it. I
The
think
wrong way of looking
is
at it.
now. Now is sort of the time where people are huddling up, figuring out, okay, what's going to happen with this mayor? And so you got to start.
What's going to happen with the next mayor, or
No, I'm saying, what do they want out of a mayor?
out of this mayor?
Any mayor. A lot of times we
Any
get caught
mayor,
up
any
in
mayor that's still
right,
sitting.
any mayor that wants to be there. This is the position of the mayor. The mayor has to do X, Y, and Z, and we want you to get this done, no matter who's in office. Meaning, there's a group of people that's inside of that has interests, and they saying, okay, no matter who wins as mayor, you're going to do this. Okay, I'm going to cut you a check to all of y'all. Whatever, I don't care who wins, but we want to make sure that whoever gets in office is going to keep this going, whatever the interest is. And that's where I think the way how we have to start looking at it. So
you're talking about setting the stage for the
you got to set the
whoever comes
stage
in
for
next.
whoever comes in. Just like you said, okay, listen, we need these 3 people on the school board. This is a fundamental thing that represents all of us. Those same organizations that make to take a lot of those polls. And you say, okay, well, this is what voters want, things like that. They come back with sort of an agenda to say, okay, here's exactly what we want. We want this. Okay, cool. And you got to ask each one of the mayors. That's why, you know, a lot of times, you know, when I tell people all the time, you know, be nonpartisan. You don't necessarily have to be partisan. I think like nonpartisan gives you the power because you don't pick a pony in a race. You just saying what you want was better for the city. And when you really sort of take that sort of posture, I believe it opened up doors, because once you get on one side, it's okay, cool, use with that side. The first thing what happens when you get sworn in a lot of times is to get reelected. So if you're over there on that side, okay, cool, man, we out for these 4 years. I don't think you want to be out. I think you need to look at the function of a mayor, right? And what is it that a mayor is supposed to do? And you could push these sort of buttons. But if you don't know exactly what they do, you're not going to give us so much, right? Like, you know, with Joanna McClinton coming up to be House Speaker, there's certain powers that she has.
That's right. That's right.
She's somebody that lives in West Philadelphia. And again, she may not even know all the powers that she has. That's how big government is. They ain't going to hold you up. A lot of times we don't know. So y'all can come back and help them out and say, hey, wait a minute. I was just looking and doing some research, man. You got this power, you got that power, you got that power. You can do this without even ask nobody. And that's what I think, like, I think the disconnect kind of sometimes comes from a lot of times, especially with like African-American elected officials. it's like, okay, we just started getting into this, but we still don't necessarily know like where all the money is. It's like certain budget people that's been doing budgets for like 20 or 30 years. They know where the money at. But your average elected official don't know where the money at. So again, but we can find out. But the good thing about it is everybody who served for the government, you can find out who they are, what they're doing now. And believe it or not, they would give you some of their experiences to say, okay, I served as budget director, man, for 20 years.
But it seems to me like they need to start staffing themselves with people that can help them in these areas. That even if they're not the people who are expertise, they help them find the people of that kind of expertise that really shuffle through the paperwork and do the necessary stuff to show you what all comes with this office.
That's part of it. But I think we got to start looking at, okay, what's the pipeline, right? We really can actually put together a partnership with a lot of these schools to start feeding the government to do key internships, let the youth just figure it out. What's going on with these positions? Because you got to learn. I mean, it's not no textbook written on it.
It's not.
You know what I mean? It's passed down. We talk about the way our civil service is set up. You got people that's in these positions. They've been in these positions, don't matter who, and you can't fire them. So you got to kind of work with them and deal with them. So, I mean, I think a good way to do it would be like to have a nice pipeline and sort of have it like, you can partner up with African-American schools, with Cheney, Lincoln, say, hey, listen, we want to do these fellowship programs and training programs where you become in and you actually can learn government, you can learn policy, you can learn budgets, you can learn ethics, you can learn all these different things. And as time go on, they'll have the experience to get plugged into these positions because there's a lot of people that's just not ready for these positions. And it don't matter what color you are. You got to be ready from day one to take this position. There's no really learning on the job. And so the way how you start to learn on the job is through the internships, fellowships. I get a lot of requests for my fellowships, from certain schools, like Central, they dominate that kind of stuff. Masterman, they dominate that kind of stuff. Hey, man, we want to be fellowships, we want to do this, we want to be that. So, I mean, but there's a way how to do it, though. I mean, we can do that. I mean, we work with Veronica joining the school. I mean, we work with a couple other schools, but most schools aren't. So again, that's sort of the way how we have to look at developing.
Well, I think we've had an exciting midterm, and so we're looking for
let's keep the momentum going.
In 2023.
Right.
But look, we ran out of time, but look, man, we got to have you back for some more discussion. We want to bring a group on, and I'm looking for a whole live show at our new location in Germantown where we can talk about Wilson Good's book. I've spoken with him on Black Votes Matter, the history of Black politics in the city of Philadelphia. So I think that's going to make for some real interesting discussion with a lot of the people who are players today. So
sure.
Omar Sabir, thank you for being with us. And we look to have you again on the Souls of Black Folk broadcast.
Yes, sir.
Sure, it's anytime. And that's also another quick thing about Wilson Good, man. He was like 42 when he got elected mayor. So if you put in younger candidates and you can, once they serve, that's a wealth of knowledge. Like President Barack Obama, you could pull, there's not too many people that saw the vantage point that he saw. We got to take advantage of that, man. Hey, man,
hey, we got to talk about it again. Okay.
That's right. Sounds
Take
good.
care.
All right.
All right. Thank you.